And this one's gonna be different as far as the content goes that we've covered here so far on Patch Notes. We're going to be taking a look at the esports scene, specifically how it relates to League of Legends and the potential future that lies ahead for it moving into 2022. Now, a couple of weeks ago, an article did come out, I believe it was by the Washington Post, where an interview was done with the head of Riot Esports, John Needham, talking about League of Legends as it relates to their esports market, but in general, how Riot Esports is specifically doing. And the current answer to that is Riot Games Esports still has yet to turn a profit, even moving into the end of Q4 2021, going into 2022. There's still a bit of strategic planning to be had. And this bit of information comes as quite of a shock to me. League of Legends is a game that I've never necessarily played for about over a total of 10 matches. I mean, even during that time, it was during the phase where it was starting to grow in popularity and people were jumping on left and right. A couple of friends of mine had jumped in. They now wrote it out to like gold and diamond ranks and shit, so hats off to them. But as far as my experience goes with League of Legends, I pretty much have about 10 matches, and half of them were split between Misfortune and a character by the name of Sin, who was essentially like the Bane knockoff of this world. He would like get pumped up on like toxic like venom gas. He could shoot glue for some reason. I guess he was like a chemist, but then he'd also like flip you over his head and shit. So it would create hype moments for me. But then I immediately realized I was way out of my scope, especially playing against some other experienced players. So knowing that it exists within that kind of like headspace of the casual gamers, definitely the veteran players who are currently going through it, as well as the vast amount of esports organizations that have their hands in the honeypot that is the LCS. It's really strange to me. Right now, they currently sit at about 117 teams that are split across 12 different regional circuits. And that's actually like quadrupling the amount of NFL teams that currently exist too. So with the amount of sprawl that exists from those league teams, about 117 in total, as mentioned, I'm really curious to see as to what's been the kind of dividing factor between how League of Legends and Riot Esports haven't really been able to, if not turn a profit, at least break even at this point. And if you guys made it this far, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel here at Final Boss Ron. With our Patch Notes segments, we always try to cover the latest and greatest gaming news that's out there of relevance to this channel and hopefully relevant to you guys as well too. Of course, be sure to always leave a comment down below, not only on your thoughts of what's going on in the video as far as the LCS is concerned, but if there's any gaming news you guys may have come across that you want to see us cover here in the channel, leave that down below as well. I look forward to making a video out of it potentially. Especially with the fact that when you see an LCS stream pop up on your feed, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, you're bound to click on it and find literally a whole entire production behind it on even the level of what the NFL considers the Super Bowl. You have the entire commentary team, you have the pomp and circumstance behind whichever competitive teams it is. The one game that I watched recently, just to do a bit of research behind the games, was I believe it was 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid back in like summer of 2020. The first game or something like that. But there's a grand stage as far as it goes with where 100 Thieves and Team Liquid parks themselves on. I mean, we're talking about WWE styled Titantrons in the back detailing like highlights from the previous games, not only themselves, their pictures, team logos and shit like that. Then you got the Secret Labs Omega chairs hanging out in the back, the monitors, the super sensitive mice and keyboards. So it's like there's definitely a lot of spending, it seems like, up front, going into at least the production side and making sure the team has the necessary equipment to go ahead and be their best. And considering on a global scale, the LCS is very well known, and even outside companies are throwing their ad dollars at the broadcasting platforms to make sure they can display their ads, because they've even stated themselves that they believe esports is going to be the future of live sports, which is actually very exciting because that clears out a very large roadblock that would be coming down the line as far as getting these outside companies to understand why they should advertise to the market that tunes in to these LCS games. Now, with continuing the article, John Needham did go on record and say that, of course, he believes too esports is the future of sport, and that he does believe that they'll be on the right side of history as far as things are concerned. So turning a profit isn't 100% a necessity at this time. However, the midterm goal at where they're set in right now is to at least try to break even where they're just eating into the revenue that they are making. And as far as the ecosystem goes for Riot Games, esports, and the LCS as far as it's concerned, we've done a little bit of research to go ahead and define what that is and where the revenue is being driven, to maybe hopefully define where the revenue is lacking and what could potentially happen going forward in the future as far as a pivot goes. First and foremost, of course, we know how League of Legends goes. It usually consists of a team of 5 players, and in order to get into the LCS, that team has to necessarily pony up the money to shell out for a franchise fee that they then buy in to the competitive circuits as far as the LCS is concerned. That's method one of how Riot is pulling in revenue. They're basically getting the money in off of the LCS teams that start entering in the space. I believe that's why we're probably sitting at 117, and it's not like a regulated even number, because that is kind of weird when we think about it. And of course, the second alley here is that with the LCS, we need someone to go ahead and put it on camera in order for it to be actually broadcasted out to an audience, of which we don't have the infrastructure to support. So let's go ahead and find other people who have the infrastructure or the platform, and we'll sell them the broadcasting rights for hopefully a multi-year deal, or if anything, a 1-year deal, and we'll take it day by day as far as it goes. And that's where Twitch and YouTube comes into play. They'll work out deals with Riot Games to go ahead and set up the broadcasting rights for the LCS tournament. I believe that's why you maybe see it flip-flop. That information, I think, is definitely a bit over my head. I don't know if the LCS does flip-flop between Twitch and YouTube, or if it goes on at the same time. I just know either which way, you try to jump in and co-stream any of these events, you get your channel fucking shut down in like 2 minutes. That's besides the point. So we essentially have two faucets pouring into Riot Games as a whole and the LCS, the franchise fees and the revenue that we're making off the broadcast rights. And hopefully, if anything, because as far as my understanding goes, if Twitch and YouTube have the ability to go ahead and broadcast the streams, then that means that the ad revenue should inherently be going through their platform, which means that if anything, at the very minimum, hopefully Riot Esports is also making a kickback off of the ad revenue. I mean, the game we just watched, doing research, I saw ads for fucking companies I didn't even think would know about this game in any of its entirety. Honda, State Farm, I know about the Buffalo Wild Wings one, but yeah, Honda, State Farm, Buffalo Wild Wings, Monster Energy drink, obviously, a Red Bull, obviously, to that extent. But companies from all different angles already have their advertising footing inside this presentation, which in theory would be a really good thing for Honda and State Farm to definitely pick up some sales wherever they could by advertising out through the LCS. However, as far as the target audience goes, that's where the rest of this article takes kind of a left turn as far as where the direction is going to be heading for the LCS. So Needham goes on to essentially lay it all out on the line and state that the goal is to eventually make not only the LCS profitable, but the ecosystem is profitable as a whole, as far as the franchise teams are concerned, as far as the broadcasting goes and the ad revenue goes right now. I know for the league teams, I believe they are responsible for hosting most of their own infrastructure. So as far as things like travel goes, practice arenas, and even hosting their own events, of course, they're coming out of pocket for that, on top of coming out of pocket for the franchise license too as well, and then competing for the ability to win. I believe lately it was about like $2.25 million that was on the line for the whole event as a total. So how that factors into what they've spent in kind of that return on investment, like if you make it all the way and then you then lose, you're out all that money and then you didn't even get $2 million. Is that even close to what you were hoping to make as far as just breaking even goes on the league's end? Who knows? And even with the fact that they're trying to avoid just padding Riot's pockets, I mean, I'm sure Riot's doing very well as far as generating revenue goes with not only skin purchases done on their end from League of Legends, they also have Valorant too, and the thousands of skins people are actively just shelling out of their wallets to buy. I'm pretty sure they're not concerned on that side of the fence what's going on, but as far as esports goes, it really just serves as a marketing tool to bring more players into the game to get involved, hopefully get in the competitive scene, but if anything, become a consumer of the games themselves and therefore a purchaser of the skins to give themselves a bit more of an identity in the game. So looking at the profitability and other ways to drive in revenue, I think the one thing to mainly consider here, especially going forward, is the potential cost that is being incurred by Riot Esports, whether it's setting up the league events or buying out the venues to host the live events. Of course, with the worldwide sickness, that has shut live events down, so that can definitely be something that's played into why the esports scene hasn't really quite necessarily picked up, with the fact that we can't bring the players in. But I wanted to take a note at one last thing that was pointed out here in the article as well, from John Needham. He goes on to reinforce the idea that Riot Games as an organization as a whole is focused on becoming a 21st century entertainment company that of course is going to be deeply rooted in games. What that can mean in the future is almost anything, but of course, if you guys have seen so far, we have things like League of Legends, we have the LCS tied in, the Arcane Netflix series that came out, so there's definitely a multiverse that we're trying to expand into, or a mediaverse I should say, not multiverse because Marvel seems to have a pretty much big lock on that, but a mediaverse that not only is going to surround League of Legends, a mediaverse that could potentially surround Valorant and even Project L, that fighting game, which is going to be making its appearance, or we're going to be getting some news about hopefully next year as well. So there's definitely a motion, a footing here for Riot Games to start taking the entertainment to the next level with their games and drawing the audience. But, and this is the biggest factor here so far, and one thing we need to highlight here in the video, maybe we shouldn't be highlighting here in the video so late, is the fact that when John Needham was asked if League plans to focus on bringing in any average casual players of games that aren't 100% necessarily focused on League of Legends in general, he goes back to kind of pivot and say, from an honesty perspective, they're not really wasting a lot of time trying to convert any non-league players into watching League of Legends esports, and states that fundamental to the spectating experience of League of Legends is knowing the game. Now, on one end, don't get me wrong, I do understand that sentiment of where he's coming from specifically. Of course, you want people to watch the game that know the game, because then they know which moments to get hyped to, and it kind of creates a good environment of like camaraderie between everyone. But eventually what happens is that if only those specific people know the game, then the audience never really grows. If you're only targeting the people who are consistently playing the game, or if you're making a motion to try to get back the people who stopped playing the game for whichever reasons, whether it was their champion got nerfed into the ground, they got tired of the toxic meta, etc., etc., focusing on those two buckets still consist of people who played League. And you don't really go anywhere if you don't make an effort to incorporate any newbies or kind of like onboard them into the game in its entirety. John Needham, if somehow you've managed to find this video, whether an intern shared it with you or you managed to find it through browsing YouTube and you hit up LCS, we need to address the fact that if you want to break even with Riot Esports, you need to figure out a way to make this production more digestible to the broader audience out there, especially those people who probably just picked up the Netflix Arcane series and actually are enjoying themselves and want to see more about what the game is about. When they come into watching the LCS perspective, they're not going to have an idea of what's going on, especially with the pace of the game, and they're probably going to get thrown out. You're not going to see any revenue from them as far as getting them in the game goes, and buying skins goes as well, or even tickets to the event. And also, as it goes, there's not too much we can do for the game. The game is what the game is. We'd have to build a League of Legends 2 if we wanted to focus out about how to make it more presentable, but at the end of the day, it's focused on the production, how we can make the game more entertaining to the outside viewer, and as well too, this is all good data for as far as that Project L game is coming, and we know it's coming, what we can do going forward as far as the entertainment factor goes from the fighting game, but that's another topic we can cover for later. As always, guys, in the comments below, let me know your thoughts specifically on what you learned here about the LCS and how it operates today, and what you think could maybe be done better going forward as far as the future is concerned. And of course, be sure to like the video as mentioned earlier, subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with the LCS or any other patch notes segments that we cover here for the games that matter near and dear to our hearts. As always, guys, my name is Final Boss Ron, tower diving to a top lane near you. I'll catch you next time.